This is a real treat we have here for you today. The original plan was to have a couple of longer talks, and then we figured that we'll just make this into a long, very substantive panel focusing on the state of electronic voting machines in the country of India. And India, if you don't know it, is the largest representative democracy on the planet. The challenges they have for running elections are unparalleled, easy enough to say. I'm not going to tell you more about that because I believe our panelists have a lot more to say there, but I would like to introduce them briefly. Our first speaker is GVL Narasimha Rao. He is a leading pollster and election analyst and political commentator in India. He blogs quite frequently at indiaevm.com/blogs. You should definitely check that out, and contributes quite often to leading Indian periodicals. He has authored a book called Democracy at Risk, Can we trust our electronic voting machines? That makes a case for insecurities in the Indian EVMs. And he is president of VETA, Citizens for Verifiability, Transparency, and Accountability in Elections. And that's GVL Narasimha Rao. Our next speaker will be Alok Shukla. He is the Deputy Election Commissioner of the Election Commission of India. He was, since 1986, has been part of the Office of the India Administrative Service. Feel free to correct me when you get the mic if I say something wrong. He's a medical doctor by training, and he's received the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Administration for the computerization of the procurement and public distribution system. Alex Halderman, who many of you probably know from previous EVT votes, has a long history of electronic voting research. In 2006, he co-authored one of the first deep hands-on studies of a voting system using the AccuVote TS, and identified a number of ways you could inject malicious code and otherwise compromise the system. 2007, along with a lot of us in the room, he participated in the California top-to-bottom review, and which ended up in the decertification and subsequent recertification of voting machines in California. In 2009, he last year was part of the team that developed a return-oriented programming attack, which is sort of like the nuclear bomb of these kinds of attacks, where you can pretty much find one hole and build any attack arbitrarily on the fly. Maybe that's probably too simplistic. Anyway, and this year, come to the rump session, you'll see the next work, which involves a Sequoia AVC Edge DRE, and it's pretty fascinating, subtle, and simple work that you'll all get a kick out of. And he holds a PhD from Princeton University, is now an assistant professor at the University of Michigan Computer Science Department. Our last speaker is Professor P.V. Indirasan. His bio is so long and storied and amazing that it would be, any attempt to summarize his accomplishments would be quite difficult. He's a professor, he has been a professor in various schools in India, most notably, I believe, the director of IIT Madras. He has a ton of awards. It's funny how people like me with not a lot to say about ourselves, if you try to do my bio, it would be very short, and people with just amazing accomplishments, it's a similar thing. It's really hard to summarize some of the things he's done. He's got a number of honorary degrees, a ton of awards. He's an honorary member of the US IEEE, a number of things like that. So we're going to jump into it right now. First up is GVL Narasimha Rao. Feel free to plug in. And if you'll get 15 minutes exactly each, I have cards right here that I will signal you 5, 2, and 1.
I hope I can connect right away.
Yeah. And I won't start until you're comfortable.
Can someone help me with this?
Someone fix projection.
Okay, great. How do I see it on the screen? F5? I'll see it there and late. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Joseph, for a very generous introduction. It's very fortunate that we have a long discussion on India's specific discussion on electronic voting today afternoon. I had recently published a book with the title Democracy at Risk, and I chose to give the same title to my presentation to show how important the whole subject is. Let me straight away get into my slides. India's democracy, as he introduced, is the world's largest democracy with 714 million electorate. It's a very big number, and we have parliamentary elections every 5 years, unless they happen earlier because of some problems. Otherwise, the life of our lower house of parliament is 5 years, 543 parliamentary constituencies. We have first past the post electoral system. So in each constituency, the candidate who gets maximum number of votes is declared a winner. We have a multi-party system. A large number of regional parties have sprung up in the last so many years, and they're fiercely competitive. A number of contests are decided by a mere 1%, 2%, 3% kind of margins. So it's very, very competitive elections, except in a few constituencies where they are won by large margins. So to give you a sense of how voting happens in India, until 1996, all parliamentary elections in India were held with paper ballots and hand counting. 700, 600 million people, and maybe the number was slightly smaller then. All of them voted only on paper ballots and hand counting. And this used to take some time, a couple of days to have the final results coming in. So therefore, electronic voting was considered to be, was brought in as some kind of a solution to various problems that Indian democracy had, particularly the electoral democracy. And let me give an introduction to the electronic voting. In 1998, electronic voting machines were introduced on a limited scale in some parliamentary urban constituencies. But from 2004 onwards, all elections in India are held completely on electronic voting, and there is no other method of voting. Electronic voting machines, so we have had two parliamentary elections so far, 2004 and 2009. And both these elections were completely electronic. And this is the kind of a system we have. I am required to do this background. I'm actually consuming a lot of my time because I wanted to give a backgrounder to the whole discussion. This is what we have. This is our electronic voting machine. We have two units called the balloting unit and the control unit, which are connected by a 5-meter long cable. And the ballot unit is where you actually press a button to register or record a vote. And the names of all the candidates in that particular constituency are printed on a ballot paper, and the paper is stuck on this ballot unit. So a candidate, a voter, comes to a polling booth, he looks at the name or the symbol. Every candidate is assigned a symbol. He looks at the symbol and presses the button, blue button next to it. And as soon as this button is pressed, a light glows next to it, LED glows next to that button. That's some kind of an assurance to the voter that the vote has gone to that candidate. And a beep sound comes out of the control unit. So this is the kind of a confirmation to the voter that his vote has gone to the candidate that he had desired to vote for. And a sound says, okay, a sound is an acknowledgement that the vote has been registered. So and now let me say there are instances where voting machines have failed. And this happens not certainly on a very mega scale, but certainly in a significant number of places. For example, voters have made complaints in some polling stations, and that their vote, about the faulty functioning of the machines, the kind of mistakes that have been, the kind of failures that have been reported in the field are something like this: a wrong light flashing, that you press the button of one candidate and then a light went flashing somewhere else. So a voter becomes panicky. He says, okay, why is my vote going somewhere else? Okay, these are some kind of complaints that one has come across. And the voting machines sometimes do not give a beep sound. Sometimes they give a non-stop beep sound, multiple beeps. So these are some of the instances. And some switches do not function during polling. So you press a button, but still the vote doesn't get registered. So midway during the polling, the machine is replaced. And Election Commission, I'm citing their own statement, 188 control units, 137 ballot units were found defective during polling in one state where we had a lot of complaints. And this is their own acknowledgement, but this is out of, say, something like 50, 60,000 machines. So numbers are not very large, but then wherever this happens, it gives rise to a lot of loss of trust, and it gives rise to a doubt to the voters that something fishy is happening. And these do get carried all over the state and country in the media. And there are other problems. I'm not giving examples here. I have all of it right here. If required, we can discuss it later. There are instances of vote switching, as I mentioned. So you have voted for a candidate and the vote went to somebody else. There are cases of lost votes. So some votes have completely gone missing, either because the machine had failed or things like that. And mismatch between votes polled. The actual number of people who voted in a polling place on a particular day was X, but when the counting takes place, that number turns out to be either X plus or X minus. Why is that? When the machine is sealed right after polling, why would there be such a discrepancy? We don't know. And the Election Commission admits to some of these problems. Maybe not in terms of exact specific instances, but they do acknowledge these problems are there, but they have not offered so far any technical explanations for them or any remedies for them. Now let me tell you, I'm a pollster by profession. Until 99, 96, 98, and 99, we have had 3 parliamentary elections, and these were my projections for the 3 years for the English newspaper, Times of India, which apparently is the largest circulating, largest read English daily in the world. Okay? My projections were bang on. 3 continuous elections, completely held on paper ballots. We predicted a particular number and plus minus 1-2 seats, which is an amazing accuracy. We cannot really hope to get that kind of accuracy, but we were successful continuously in 3 elections held with paper ballots. Come 2004. 2004, these are the results. These are not my projections alone. I'm showing the projections of all media organizations, a whole range of television networks in India. All of them I have put here. I have not excluded anything. And they all have said this party would get 240, 270 seats, and they ended up getting 185 seats. And that's a huge gap. And even if, as a pollster, I know I could go wrong. It's not that we get it right all the time, but we couldn't be wrong so badly. But then we started looking inward. We thought there were problems with our polls, there were problems with our techniques, so we needed to reform. So we did a lot of internal scrutiny. But then, and we never thought of any other issue. Then 2009, it turns out to be the same story. And the party which is expected to win no more than 200 seats usually, it ends up getting 260 seats. I'm not making any allegations. So this is what really got us to look at a whole lot of other things. Why is it that I was able to predict, many others were able to predict elections correctly until 99 with paper ballots, and we are not able to do it now? Is there something more to the story than what meets the eye? So after 2004, we started looking outward, external factors. And we then stumbled upon a lot of interesting facts about voting machines. For a moment, I'm not making any allegations, but this was enough circumstantial evidence for me to go into a whole lot of factors concerning elections. And now this is the kind of facts that we come up with. What are the electronic voting machines and what are their vulnerabilities? Let me give you a few examples. Let me give you a few facts. We have what is called direct recording electronic voting machines, and no paper record is maintained. And the Election Commission of India, I will keep referring to it as ECI, they do not have access to the software, do not have access to the source code in the machines that are being used. About 1.3 million of them are being used, and these are manufactured by 2 public sector, government-owned 100% government-owned companies, and they don't have them. I think I'll have to quickly run through. The software is actually foreign companies. 2 foreign companies are actually being given this responsibility to fuse the software.
I can take care of the other stuff.
Okay, so a lot of technical aspects. I'll try to quickly. How much time do I have?
You have a little less than 5 minutes.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so voting machine. Okay, what is being done is mostly functionality testing, black box testing, and there is no white box testing as we understand. And a large number of private players are involved in election operations, which is a real major change from the paper ballot regime. Because in paper ballots, everything was being done by the government officials who have accountability. And now a lot of operations are actually given out to these private companies, these 2 manufacturers. They are public sector companies, but then they have no accountability. They are hiring services of some authorized technicians who go and handle machines. So all this really, and then there are some foreign companies involved in fusing of software, and the software, these microchips are delivered to the manufacturer through their vendors in India. We don't know who they are. So a whole lot of players about which the public doesn't know. We've been asking a lot of questions, and we still haven't got much clue on that. I hope we would really get to hear something about it in the days to come. And we see that, and the Election Commission of India has been making these statements. Our machines are fail-safe. They are fully tamper-proof. They need no improvement whatsoever. They are standalone machines without being a part of a network, and therefore there is no provision for input, and therefore they cannot be hacked, so on and so forth. I'm not going into, and importantly, administrative safeguards. We have administrative safeguards, so machines cannot prevent fraud on their own. Therefore, we have administrative mechanisms. Let me take you through very quickly what these systems are. There is something called first-level checking of the machines. A couple of weeks before, maybe about 4 weeks or 3 weeks before an election. And this is again being done by individuals, employees, and also authorized technicians, about whose background we don't know. And as a result, I think we have great concerns about them. And there are, in the book, I have cited certain first-hand accounts of some engineers, authorized people, apparently authorized, we don't have a proof, approaching politicians and telling them to pay a princely sum for fixing elections. And these are names available, so I don't know why this is not being probed. So there is a randomization of electronic voting machines which happens, but then that randomization happens within a district, what we call a district. And many parliamentary constituencies are as big as districts. So even if a machine's in a particular district, it doesn't matter where the machine I have hacked goes to. If I have hacked 100 machines in a particular district, they would end up in some polling place under my constituency. So I would tend to benefit if I'm able to, if I can steal votes, if I have done something to steal votes, it doesn't matter where this goes. So therefore, we don't see that as a major security feature. And mock poll, the whole the reliance on this security of this instrument, they say at different points of time we conduct a mock poll, we bunch, we give some votes and then check whether the votes have been counted properly or not. But we think that's not an adequate safeguard, because if you have a Trojan introduced into the machine, it could still work fine when you have a mock poll, and it can steal votes when you aren't watchful. So there are many other issues. I think I can go on, and I'll just quickly wind it up saying there are many parties which have raised questions about this, political parties, and now we hope this discussion would continue in India. We have had, I think, a lot of heated debate during lunch session itself. So we hope to, we believe this is just the beginning of the debate, and we are able to continue this when we go back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Switch needs to be read.
This one?
Yeah, sorry to delay.
Peter, please don't interrupt. I'm sorry, but this is very carefully orchestrated.
I have a lot more.
That was an absolutely critical part.
No, I have a lot more to say, but I think let me.
You're welcome to ask that in Q&A. We'll have 50 minutes of Q&A.
Which one?
No coups allowed, people. I'm running this show.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
Not Peter. Peter is one of my bosses, so. Yeah, I got friends in high places. Are you insinuating I'm part of organized crime? Don't steal my password. Damn. Sorry. If you want to use this has a laser pointer.
I think
front
I
back?
can do this one, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, friends.
This is Alok Shukla, Deputy Election Commissioner of the Election Commission of India. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Good afternoon, friends. Since I have only 15 minutes, I think instead of going point by point, I would rather take you through this. I'm slightly feeling a little intimidated with so many computer professionals. I am not one. I'm basically an administrator. So I'll try and give you the generalist perspective and maybe the citizen's perspective on voting in India. Mr. Narasimha Rao has made my job a little easy by giving you all the background, so I need not go into it. I will straight away go into our electronic voting machines. Mr. Rao has already explained to you how the machine looks like. It has two units, a control unit and a ballot unit and so on. The uniqueness of the Indian electronic voting machine is, number one, it does not have an operating system. Number two, it cannot be networked, neither through wires nor wirelessly. There is no input possible except from the balloting unit. As you would have seen that there is a control unit and a balloting unit. The data is in the control unit. The balloting unit is almost like a keyboard on which the candidate buttons are there, and you press the candidate button so that you cast a vote in favor of a candidate of your choice, and that data goes into the control unit. The microcontroller chip is a one-time programmable or mask. There are two versions of the machine. Chip, and the software code is burnt into the chip in the form of a hex code. There is no RAM there, and the operation of the software is at the chip level. So it's not executed in the memory. I suppose Professor Indiresan would be able to give you some more details on the technical aspects of the machine, but we feel that all of these taken together makes it very, very difficult and improbable that anybody might be able to hack into the machine. I'll come into it a little later also. Now, India is a democracy, the United States is a democracy, and elections are a must in a democracy. So how do we run elections? There are, to my knowledge, only 3 different ways. You can have a ballot paper-based system, you can have an electronic voting-based system, and you can have a system which is electronic with paper trail. And I suppose in the United States you have all of them in different places, and you're working with all of them, and I suppose that citizens in United States in different counties, in different states, are at least to a certain extent satisfied with all 3 of them. Or dissatisfied equally. Okay, now let me come to each one of them, and as I said, I'm trying to give you an administrator's and a generalist point of view, not a computer professional's point of view, because I am not a computer professional and I can't go into the technical and code aspects of it. Are ballot paper elections better than EVMs? Now let me give you a bit of a history. In India, the first 2 general elections were conducted in a very peculiar ballot system. We had separate ballot boxes for each candidate. And the ballot paper used to be common, because people thought that the citizen who is illiterate will not be able to mark the ballot paper properly. The citizens were therefore expected to put the ballot paper in the ballot box of the candidate of their choice. That was in the first 2 general elections. Then we came up with the system of marking of the ballot paper using a rubber stamp which was stamped on the ballot paper. And then, as Mr. Narasimha Rao has pointed out, we came into the system of the electronic voting machine. Also, please understand that this electronic voting system didn't just happen. The Parliament, the Indian Parliament, which is the supreme law-making body for India, highest democratic institution, they appointed an all-party committee called the Electoral Reforms Committee, with representation from all political parties, including the opposition parties. This committee then appointed an expert committee, which was chaired at that point of time by Professor Sampath, and then Professor Indrasan was also a member of that committee. He is now the chairperson of the expert committee, which we have now. But at that time, he was a member. This expert committee then heard representations from people all over the country, from politicians, political parties, other stakeholders, NGOs, and then went into the details of the electronic voting machines and then submitted a report. This report was presented to the Parliament, and the Parliament, in their wisdom, amended the Representation of People's Act 1951, under which we conduct elections, and allowed for the use of these electronic voting machines. Now, since this has been passed as an act by the Parliament, therefore, we must understand that this is the will of the people. And the Parliament even now can amend the act again and say that electronic voting machines cannot be used. As Mr. Narasimha Rao has pointed out, this debate is ongoing in our country, and it may actually happen one day. But as the law stands now, the Parliament has enabled the use of electronic voting machines that we have. In any case, we found that in the balloting system also, there used to be a lot of problems. There used to be complaints of rigging. People will snatch away ballot boxes. People will stamp large number of ballot papers and stuff into the ballot box. As a matter of fact, our experience is that after the electronic voting machines have been pressed into service, these kinds of complaints have actually gone very, very low. The complaints of rigging, etc. One of the reasons is that the voting machine has been manufactured in such a manner that between two votes cast, there has to be a minimum delay of 12 seconds. So if you want to stuff a balloting machine, you need a whole day to stuff it. Whereas if you want to stamp ballot papers and stuff it into the ballot box quickly, you can do it in half an hour. And of course, ballot papers have their own problems. I don't need to go into that. Paper trail. Now, logistics of paper trail are very difficult. This morning I was listening to various kinds of sessions, and we found that one vote being cast requires 4 minutes in certain cases. Even citizens with very high literacy in the United States find it difficult to fill up that bubble. I don't know how the citizens in India who are mostly illiterate will be properly able to fill up that bubble and then properly scan it or not is something that I don't really understand. Jamming of printers, improper printing. In remote areas, we have no electricity. There are polling stations in our country where you have to walk 6 days to reach the polling station. So we have to work on batteries. And of course, it's more expensive. Now, however, we must understand that if you're talking of a ballot paper system or a paper trail system, there also votes can be stolen. The paper trail is inside a box, so you can open the seal of the box, you can remove the paper trail, print another paper trail and put it into the box. If you can hack a electronic voting machine, so you can hack a scanner. So ultimately, it is all the administrative safeguards along with the technical safeguards which finally lead to a good to a good voting system. So, as an example, I can sort of say that all of us know that currency notes can be counterfeit, but we don't go back to the barter system. That currency notes can be counterfeit, therefore let us go back to the barter system, let us no longer use currency. What we do is we bring in more stringent administrative action. So therefore the answer is greater transparency at all stages, full involvement of all stakeholders, tighter administrative safeguards, and appropriate technology. Some of the questions which have been raised, let me try and answer them. Of course, Professor Indrasan, with his technical background, will give you greater technical answers. One is the possibility of a Trojan horse in the software. Now, as I explained to you, this software is written into the chip at the time of manufacture. Some of our machines which we are using now were actually manufactured 10 years, 12 years back. Now, if you write a Trojan 12 years back into the software, you can't put it now after the machine has been, unless you change the chip. So if it was written at that time and it has been used for the last 12 years continuously to help certain people win or lose elections, I don't think it's going to remain a secret for such a long time. Also, the candidates are not known till the elections are announced. The sequence of the candidates on the balloting unit is not fixed. because the Election Commission has directed that the names of the candidates will be in the sequence of their alphabetical order. So in one election, a sequence will be different. In another election, the sequence will be different. This sequence is known only 14 days before the poll. By that time, the machine has been prepared and it has been sealed. So therefore, Trojan is mostly, I feel, an imagination in the minds of the people. I'm not saying that a Trojan cannot be introduced in a software. It can certainly be. But I do not think that we have a Trojan in our machines. Also, let me say, the debate which has been going on in India, there have been court cases which I will come to a little while later. In none of the court cases, any petitioner has ever alleged that there is actually a Trojan anywhere. All they have said is that there is a possibility of a Trojan being written in a software. That everybody knows. But there is not even an allegation that there can be a Trojan. The second thing is, Alex has shown a demonstration which, in all fairness, after he has made his presentation, maybe during question-answer session, we will be allowed to sort of respond to some of it. But one thing that he has shown is that you change the display with a Bluetooth device in it. Now, as I explained to you, our machine is not a networked machine. Therefore, by putting a Bluetooth, you're making it networked. However, a Bluetooth device, in order to function, has to be detected by a transmitter. So therefore, even if you put a Bluetooth device, it will not go undetected. And if we detect a Bluetooth device, we are not going to use that machine. We are not going to count it. Even if you put it there, we are going to order a repoll in that particular polling station. Similarly, what he has also probably shown is that on the memory you put a clip and thereby read the data and write the data back on the memory. For that, you need access to the components of the machine. But as I was trying to explain to you, before the machine is prepared for the poll, the machine is opened, it is shown to everybody, political parties, their representatives, then it is closed and sealed. A pink paper seal, which is printed by our security printing press, which also prints the Indian currency, prints that particular seal, which is uniquely numbered, and the paper seal is put around the machine. All the candidates and their representatives can put their signatures on the seal. When the machine comes back for counting, the first thing we check is that the seal is intact. And if the seal is broken, then we do not count the machine. We order a repoll. So therefore, though theoretically you may write or read, but in actual practice, in an election, you have no access directly to this. Okay. Now I'll quickly go through some of the court decisions. One decision of the German High Court is quoted very often, but I would like to point out decisions by the Indian courts. Bombay High Court, Nagpur Bench, and Karnataka High Courts in two landmark judgments have said this: the ECI EVM invention is undoubtedly a great achievement in the electronic and computer technology and is a national pride. Kerala High Court has also recorded its appreciation. Madras High Court has said the contention of the Learned Council that the use of EVMs in Japan and United States of America has been proved to be a failure also does not hold any water. In India, we are not following the system prevailing in the United States of America or Japan. So this is what the courts in India have said. The advantages, of course, modernizes election process, it's user-friendly, simple to operate, preserves voting secrecy, no scope for invalid votes, facilitates quick counting, reusable. Huge expenditure involved in printing is avoided, low operating costs, and of course, not the least, environment-friendly because you don't end up wasting paper. In summary, no system is foolproof. I cannot say that the EVM is a foolproof system, but so the paper trail also is not a foolproof system, and ballot paper also is not a foolproof system. Let me tell you a very interesting story. In 1977, when Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India, a rumor went round, and the case went up to the Supreme Court, where they said that because Mrs. Gandhi is very friendly with the then USSR, she had imported a special ink. We had ballot paper at that time. A special ink had been imported, by which you can stamp wherever you want to stamp on the ballot paper, it will magically disappear and a mark will appear against the name of Mrs. Indira Gandhi. No, and it actually the case went up to the Supreme Court, which finally threw away the case. So ballot paper, no system is foolproof. Technological solution is not the final thing. You have to look at administrative safeguards. And finally, in conclusion, what I have to say is that every country in its own evolutionary state, for its own citizens, has to develop a particular system which is suited to it. You of all in the United States would understand this because you don't even have a common system for the entire country. You allow people in individual counties to have a system which is suited to that county. You will certainly allow us in India to have a system which is suited to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Professor Alex Halderman of the University of Michigan.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to talk about some research results that my co-authors and I recently had having to do with India's EVMs. Our full paper is going to appear at CCS, and I don't want to preempt that presentation, which will probably be given by one of my students. So I'm just going to today give you a little bit of background about the backstory and then the summary of our findings and some of their implications for our current debate. But you can find our full paper online now at indiaevm.org, and please come to the talk at CCS in October. So how did all of this get started? I want to give you some idea of how I got involved in the process in India. Maybe I can make this a little bit bigger so I can see it. So this past February, I was invited to visit India for a symposium that was organized coinciding with the release of Mr. Rao's book about the EVMs. And this was really the first chance I had to think about Indian elections in detail. I didn't know that much about what I should expect, but India is one of my favorite places to visit. It's one of my favorite countries. I've been there several times. And I think electronic voting outside of the US and Europe has received far too little research attention. So I gladly accepted. When I got there, I found myself there with Rob Honkrijp, who some of you may know. He's a voting researcher from the Netherlands and was the one who helped get DRE voting machines banned there. Rob and I were quickly introduced to this man, Hari Prasad, who is an electrical engineer from Hyderabad and runs a prototyping company there called Net India. Hari is now undoubtedly India's foremost electronic voting security researcher. He's a co-author on our paper. We worked with him extensively. He's a really great guy, too. But as I learned just a few days before I left for India, Hari had then recently obtained access to an electronic voting machine, the first time anyone other than the voting machine manufacturers had been able to get their hands on one for study, apparently. He obtained access to it from a source who's asked us to preserve his anonymity, but I can say that this source allowed us to study the machine as a matter of conscience because of concerns about its security. So as Mr. Rao introduced the machines, they were developed by a pair of government-owned companies under the direction of the Election Commission of India. These machines have been in use for about nationwide for, I believe, 15 years about, and there are about 1.4 million machines in use. They recorded more than 500 million votes in the last national election, to give you an idea of the scale of this. The Election Commission has maintained that the machines are perfectly secure. Here are some of the things they've said about them, that they're infallible, they're perfect, they're tamper-proof, they have no need for technical improvement. All of these things made me really, really worry about the security of voting in India, even before I got on the plane. So here's the machine we studied. We performed a security analysis on it to test the Election Commission's claims. As you can see, there's a ballot unit, the voter just presses a button, and there's a control unit that counts the button presses and then outputs the results. So we opened it up. This is what's inside. This is our work is the first time the public has been able to see what's inside. It's a very simple design. There's a microcontroller which has the election software stored inside. In this machine, it's in a masked ROM. It's fused in at the manufacturer. And there are two EEPROM chips in the center there. They store redundant copies of the vote records. There's also this board inside the control unit. This is the display board. It's a very, very simple circuit, just some LEDs and a connector. And it just takes signals from the microprocessor and forms the numbers that show the election results. So when at the end of the election, when counting time comes, they hold up the machine in public view and press a button, and it cycles through each candidate number and shows the number of votes they've received. So here's candidate 1 got 7 votes, then it would show candidate 2 got however many, and so forth. So what did we find? All right, there are several areas where these machines are vulnerable. But sort of the meta question of all of this is how do they compare to the DREs that we've studied previously? The DREs have been thoroughly discredited in the academic security literature by now, but the machines that have been studied in the US and Europe are very complex, often with hundreds of thousands of lines of code and commodity operating systems underlying them. Indian EVMs use a far simpler design. So the research question is, do the same kinds of vulnerabilities apply, or are there different concerns we should have? So the first area in which we identified a potential security problem is that there's no way for voters or election workers to actually tell that the machine they're using is a real EVM as opposed to one that has been falsified or tampered with. Because the design is so simple, it would be easy to manufacture components or even whole units that appear to work correctly and be the real things, but are in fact dishonest. These fake dishonest units could be swapped in by criminals who are able to obtain access to the machines, or by dishonest election workers. All the components in the system, though, have to be trusted for to have confidence in the result. The ballot unit, the control unit, even the cable. If you replace any of these parts, you can change the results. The second area where we identified a concern has to do with the software and the microcontroller. The code is burned into the microcontroller at the factory, and there's no provision for reading it out or verifying its integrity. Because the code is so simple, it would be straightforward to make similar code that appeared to have the correct functionality but actually computed dishonest totals. Insiders could replace the code before it was shipped off for manufacturing. People at the manufacturers might try to replace it. In the supply chain on the way, as the chips are coming back to India to be integrated into the machines, people could try to manipulate them and replace them with dishonest ones. So it's a terrible security problem not to have any way to verify the code. Finally, we thought about the internal state of the machine. And the simple design of the machine, again, makes it very easy to tamper with the internal state if you get access to it. The votes are stored in these two EEPROM chips, and they're very simple I2C protocol EEPROMs. After the votes are cast, a dishonest insider or other criminal with physical access to the machine could interface with these chips to change the votes stored in memory. The votes are, by the way, stored internally in the order in which they were cast. So if you can get access to that raw data, you can also violate the secret ballot and find out how everyone voted. Okay, so this might seem theoretical, So we actually built demonstrations of 2 of these attacks, and the demonstrations we built are fully functional in actual EVMs. I should say we. By we, I mean mostly my students, Scott Walchuk and Eric Wustrow, and the engineers working for Hari Prasad at NetIndia. So here's the first attack. This is a dishonest display. I have one here. A dishonest display board. If you open up the machine and swap one of these in, you can change the outcome of the election. So it looks almost identical to the real display in the control unit, there in the bottom on the left. But underneath the components, we've hidden an additional microcontroller and a Bluetooth radio. The dishonest display intercepts the signals the machine is trying to show and then replaces them with dishonest election results whenever the machine tries to count. Now, that picture on the bottom right, can you tell me, is that the real one or the dishonest one inside there? It's the dishonest one, in fact. So these could be swapped into machines by dishonest insiders or other criminals with physical access any time before the election, possibly years before. We built our first prototype, though. It took less than a week to build this, from commodity parts costing just a few dollars. And in India, there are so many people with electrical engineering training. There are probably 1 million people who could build something like this. Oh, by the way, that Bluetooth radio, that's so you can tell the board which candidate should receive the stolen votes. We built this Bluetooth this smartphone application running on Android that lets you do this. You just tap on the candidate you want to win, and the board will select it. But of course, you don't need to use Bluetooth. Any kind of radio protocol could work. Furthermore, you don't even need a radio. See our paper for more details about this, but there is an ingenious method for signaling to potentially Trojan code in the machines based on the number of candidates on the ballot, which is something an attacker has potential control over before the election. And you could do that to signal to a large group of machines, even if they don't have any kind of radio. This is the second attack we built. This is, while the dishonest display provides an example of a permanent hardware tampering attack, we wanted to build this to investigate the possibility of tampering with the internal state. So this is a device that we built nicknamed Clippy, and Clippy clips onto the EEPROM chips inside the machine where the votes are stored. Here's one. You can see how big it is. It fits discreetly in your shirt pocket, or in my case, I don't have a shirt pocket, so inside my badge. Clippy reads the votes out, rewrites them with different votes that make someone else win, and then writes them back. It takes only a few moments to change the votes with this device. The knob on Clippy here lets you select which candidate should win, and if you change it to position 0, it will download all the votes into the machine so you can go back and compare to the order that voters voted and find out how everyone, what candidate everyone chose. There are defenses that the Election Commission has put in through procedures, and that they argue or make the machine secure, but we disagree. The primary defense that they have in place is these tamper-evident seals that are installed at various points during the election. But seals have been discredited in the voting literature pretty thoroughly. Basically, all seals that people have seriously tried to defeat have proven vulnerable. How does India seal the machines? Well, it's a complicated system with various kinds of seals, but this is one kind of seal that they use. It's some red wax, paper labels, and string. It doesn't seem very difficult to defeat. In fact, none of the technologies that we've read about are likely to be very difficult. The other important safeguard is the physical security of the machines, but the machines are stored at locations all around the country in places, some of them including abandoned warehouses, schools, etc. It's likely that many of these could be accessed by criminals, especially with the aid of dishonest insiders or people they could bribe. Insider maintenance personnel have access at various points. It's really a very difficult problem to keep them secure. So in conclusion, the system is not tamper-proof, infallible, or perfect, as ECI has previously claimed. No system is tamper-proof, of course, but this system is particularly fragile, with vulnerable design at many levels. Complexity makes DREs insecure, but simplicity is not the cure. Simple machines can suffer from different classes of serious attacks, like physical tampering, as we've shown. The overriding problem is not complexity, but lack of transparency. Voters need to be able to see how the votes are counted. Problems should not be swept under the rug. Paper ballots, there were problems you could see. With these machines, the problems we probably can't see. So now I call on ECI to admit that the machines are not fallible, are not infallible, and to work with us to improve security, cooperating with researchers and their critics. Many other places have abandoned DRE voting. India should consider moving to a similar system that provides better transparency, like precinct count optical scan, VVPAT, or paper ballots. And this is a challenge to researchers as well. Let's develop secure and transparent voting methods that are suitable for the constraints of places like India. See my paper for more details about those constraints, but we need to think about this problem outside of the bounds of the US and Europe. So I would have liked to be able to end on a more hopeful note, but there's been a very disturbing development just in the past few days. On Saturday, Hari Prasad, my Indian co-author and the country's leading e-voting researcher, received a police summons after a criminal complaint was filed by the Election Commission. Here's a picture of the complaint. It alleges that the EVM control unit Hari studied and demonstrated on Indian television was stolen by Hari. Hari is compelled to report to the police within 4 days. He's since been given a slight extension, probably until the beginning of next week. I believe also it notes that it's along with all those concerned and all relevant documents. I presume that applies to Rop and to me also. Hari potentially faces jail time, and he's already taken out a preliminary bail bond. This is absolutely outrageous. Democratic governments do not intimidate and retaliate against their critics like this. I call upon Dr. Shukla and ECI to immediately withdraw their complaint and instead to work with us to achieve our common goal of secure and fair elections. Thank you.
Opportunity, that's fine.
I'll give you an
But
opportunity. I just want
if
to make
somebody
sure
has
it's
named
within
me,
the
then I
frame-
have to have an opportunity.
I want to do it within the framework we agreed upon.
That's fine, but
Okay.
if somebody's named me. You never said that somebody will name me. If somebody's naming me, then I need to have an opportunity.
I did not censor or
So
pre-approve
that's fine,
anyone's.
But then if you don't want to give me an opportunity, that's fine.
I will give you an opportunity. It's going to be after Professor Indira-san. I'm sorry, sir.
That's fine.
Okay.
I only raised a point. Somebody is naming me, then I need to have an opportunity.
Next up is Professor Indira-san. Sir, whenever you're ready.
Friends,
And you get 16 minutes since Alex took one
okay,
over. Oh, sorry.
friends, there is a very well-known story about NASA. They spent millions of dollars to find out how to make a pen that will work in the space. They couldn't do it. Finally, they asked the Russians, how do you manage? They said, we use pencils. So you see, the Indian system is like a pencil. Your system is a much more complex one. I do not know whether you'd agree with me or not. I think it's my personal view that in the Indian system is something which works. Now let us see I think I will not go through this presentation, maybe quickly I'll go through this. I'll go. Now all these things have been explained. I think this also has been We had a lot of invalid votes. We don't get invalid votes in an electronic system. Criminals are not able to influence elections because it takes them too much time. They have to invest, and then they may get caught. And these are the two major advantages. Now, the electronic system, the previous speaker, he said that the electronic voting machine is first made and then it is given to the election officials to use it, not in India. In India, the design was done by the election system. They gave the design what it should do, and then the engineers built a system which followed exactly what the Election Commission did. So there is a difference there. Now, these are all the things that have been explained. The important point is this: it is not a programmable machine. There is no way by which the electronic voting machine that you are having in India can be programmed. It is a fixed system. It has got a double resilient memory storage. It has got unique serial validated automatically. People have said nobody can say that whether the machine is the one that has been manufactured or not. This is something that is checked because every machine has got its own code number, and this code number has to appear. Only then the electrician, the technician will say, yes, this is our machine. This is something it is done. The second point is this, that the ballot unit that was shown can be operated only when the polling officer activates, and this can be done for only after a minimum period of 12 seconds. And of course, it has been said that the mechanical seals are not very good, but this is what the Election Commission is using and seems to be using it fairly well. There is a time that is stamped for each vote. So if the courts are the only person, in India we have got two people. One is the parliament, another is the judiciary. The parliament decides how it should be done, and the court decides whether it has been done properly or not. Now if the court wants to check, they can check every single vote that has been done, who did it, and to whom the person voted. These are the things that this is something that it can be done if a system is there, that it is possible to cross-check who voted for what and when that person voted, because there's a real-time clock in every machine. And incidentally, it's completely free of any electrical connection. It runs by a battery, and the battery is changed every time you are having a new polling. The security features are, this is something that was introduced after we looked into this. Instead of having just a single cord going from the ballot box to the polling machine, it is encrypted. You have got a large number of digits, which therefore the security is much higher. The second one is this: the interconnecting cable is now crimped and molded, and it is sealed so that you cannot, it is no radio signal can be picked up by this 5 meter, 15 feet, 16 feet long cable that connects the polling machine with the ballot box. This is something that has been introduced recently. And there is a digital signature in each control unit. Now let me come to the issues. Is the absence of Bluetooth the guarantor? Now, the point has been made that it can be introduced. Now you can say, for example, you can have a professor in a big American university. He has a new student. He has to give him a problem. He says, all right, let us find out what kind of traffic accidents can happen in the roads of Washington, because of Amtrak. Now Now, the Amtrak, of course, runs on lines. He said, no, no, no. You just change the wheels and put some tires in it. It will go on the roads. Then, it runs by electrical connection. No, no, change it to a diesel engine. And then, of course, you have to put a steering. Now, all these things you can do. The question is this, do we have to go through all these exercises which are hypothetical? If it does come, then certainly we will react to it. But at the present time, many of the complaints that have been made, it appears to us that they are far-fetched. Now, this is something that for many people who are in this profession of security may appear not very serious, but for me, having looked at it for the past 20 years, it appears that they are not very important. That the kind of thing that they are talking of, that you can change the system. If you change the system, naturally it will not work. It will not function the way we have done. But the system as it is, let anybody come and say that it can be tampered, it has got a Trojan in it, it has, now this is something nobody has been able to prove. It has gone on for several complaints have been made to the courts, and even there, they only say it is possible, it may happen. In fact, apparently the words that were used by one of our representatives here, and another representative also said it is dishonest display. I don't think it is correct. I think we must be a little more careful in making statements like this. And let me go through this. For example, the system, we can switch it off, I think. The system that was shown, that you can put in something onto the display system. Now, this is something that can be detected. It is not there now. Secondly, there is no provision to check code. There is a provision to check the system, whether the system that has been made, whether the same machine or not, yes, it is there. And there is physical access to machinery. Things can be stolen. In fact, the case against Mr. Hari Prasad is not that he demonstrated something which embarrassed the Election Commission. The case is he took a machine, according to his own confession, from one of the stores of the Election Commission. He stole it. That is the thing. Now that is the, no, it may be right, may not be right, but the question is this, that this has been claimed to have been taken from the election system, and the election system is supposed to be in a secure place. And from a secure place, it has been taken. And one machine is missing. That's the reason why there is a case against him, and also I think against Dr. Hardman here. Now, then there is the question of Flippy. You can't add anything to the system. And you change the system, now that's a very expensive process. Now you can, if you want to, Dr. Hardman, Professor Hardman can become a very rich man. He became a billionaire because our political parties are very rich. If he can prove to them that he can tamper the machine, he is most welcome to do it, and let me see whether he can do it. So these are some of the things that I think we should bear in mind. There's a difference between what is possible and what is probable. It is possible to tamper any system. I don't say it is impossible. But is it probable? If you were to do it, how are you going to do it? That's number one. There is a lot of security systems, and security systems can fail. But even then, there is security there. Physical security is there of the machines. The second thing is this, that supposing you do it, you have to sell it. It's a criminal activity to change a system which is part of the legal system of the country. It's a criminal system. You have to sell it. To whom are you going to sell it? Because in India particularly, these candidates, they go on changing their parties from one party to the other virtually in every election. So you sell it to one person, he is in one party A today, he may be in party B tomorrow, he will tell the party B people, I know somebody who can do this for me. And in fact, this is something that was mentioned today also, that people have complained, they are given promised a lot of money, but why is it that nobody gave them that kind of money? Because nobody believes it's possible. Now, this is something that you must bear in mind. There's a difference between possibility and probability. It's highly improbable. You can say that I'll end up by telling a true story. There was a gentleman who was in the CBI, which is equivalent to our FBI. He was the number 2 man there. He got a huge file. It was about export of mangoes. And he said, I'm a police officer. Why should I be bothered about export of mangoes? And why should the file be so huge? It happened because Jawaharlal Nehru got this, somebody sent him beautiful mangoes from Alfonso mangoes from Bombay, and he said, it's very tasty. You should consider exporting it. And 18 years later, it went to the equivalent to the FBI, saying this, consider the possibility of smuggling and whatever it is of mangoes, because if it is exported, these things can happen. I do not know in those years any mangoes were exported from India or not. But the fact is, so many people had such a big file to operate upon. They all were busy, but nobody was thinking of the fundamental issue, namely that mangoes had to be exported. Similarly, we have got a system where we have to run elections with more than 700, 800 million voters on the rolls, and here is a system that seems to work. I am sure it will have a lot of problems. For example, they said that the display system can be damaged. So we have changed now. We have suggested we must make some changes. I think the Election Commission has accepted it, so that it will not be possible for anybody to change it without damaging it. Because then the machine gets damaged. Once you want to change anything, the machine gets damaged. So there are, similarly, for example, the cable. It was an ordinary cable earlier till about a few years ago. Now we changed the cable. They were connected to the two machines by some simple screws. The connectors at the two ends, they were connected with simple screws. Now they are all sealed. So as and when the complaints are made, which we think there is something that should be done, the Election Commission, I find, they do react. They do take changes. They do make changes. But if you were to say, look, we are going to change the whole system, that I think is a highly improbable one. This is my personal view. Things it may be possible, I do not know, but I do not think it is probable. And therefore, we have to work in a system where you can make elections work. And there are many people who can talk of all sorts of problems that could occur, but then, is it possible? Is it probable? Now, these are the kinds of things that one should bear in mind. Please remember, if you want to escape a nuclear holocaust, the best way is you become a cockroach. Then you will be able to survive much better than others. Maybe it's possible. I do not know what will happen, but I think it's highly improbable. So I would suggest this. You have your systems, you have your culture, we are not talking about that. But as far as India is concerned, we are having a pencil. We are not having a very complicated pen. It is something which is very well sealed, which is very well protected. I'm sure there could be some cases where things get stolen, get lost, but the probability is very, very small. In fact, the 0.3% is the probability of failure of an electronic machine in all these elections, which I think is a very, very small one. And when that happens, the machine is changed. There is always a spare machine. It is changed. And the votes that were polled earlier, they are also taken into account. So to the extent it's possible, we are having a system which seems to satisfy most people. The complaints are coming now from people who would like to go back to the original criminal system. I'm using the word very carefully. Criminal system where many votes were dumped in by criminal elements. Now, that is not possible. And that is why the complaints are coming from them. Of course, our friend here, he said he is not bothered. I'm sure he's not bothered. But the persons who are funding these kinds of things, I do not know where the money is coming from. And therefore, I would plead with you that let the system function as it is, because it's functioning. If there are any problems that can be corrected, I'm sure we can persuade the election commission to accept it, and they will be changed. But till that time, don't spoil the system that is going on at the present time. I am saying this because we do have in our country many activists. I was talking to him at the lunchtime, who are absolutely negative. They want to spoil things. We have lost billions and billions of dollars because we are not allowed to make any dam, any water supply system, and many industries have been stopped because these people say some peculiar bird is going to be destroyed, and therefore you don't make this mine or you don't make this water project or something like that. I don't want such a thing to happen to the electronic voting machine because it is something that seems to have done a job much better than whatever we had earlier. You get us a better solution, certainly we'll follow it. Till that time, I plead with you, please be a little more generous to us. Thank you.
Okay, this is how I'd like to use the rest of our time. The first thing we're going to do is let Mr. Shukla respond to Alex calling him out and ECI. And then I'm going to ask one question of each side, and then we'll go straight to Q&A and spend all the time till 5:10 in Q&A. So if you have a question, feel free to line up quietly at the microphone.
Thank you. Right, thank you. As a matter of fact, I would have really liked to sort of have the debate mainly on the academic issues. However, since a specific incident has been raised and I've been named, therefore I think I have a right to sort of respond to that, and that's the reason I'm responding to it. Secondly, lots of very general statements have been attributed to the Election Commission of India. I happen to be working for Election Commission of India, and therefore I need to respond to that also. A statement was made that the Election Commission of India is not willing to improve and not willing to listen and has said that the system is foolproof. We never made such a statement. As a matter of fact, if you saw my presentation, I said no system is foolproof and that we are willing to listen and learn and improve. As a matter of fact, we have continuously changed and improved our system over the last so many years. Mr. Narasimha Rao sitting here, since now we've named, therefore, one of his friends, one of his own group members of VETA, Mr. V.V. Rao, has been interacting with the Election Commission of India on some of these issues. And tomorrow, on the 10th, we have another meeting scheduled with Mr. V.V. Rao for a long discussion on this. So therefore, this is an absolutely false statement that we are not willing to listen, talk, and learn. That's one. The second thing is about the seals. Now, it's a particular one kind of seal was shown to you. There are at least 14 different kinds of seals which we put. And I certainly do not feel that it is very easy to tamper with these seals. One of the reasons which I want to also bring to your notice is that the Election Commission of India has continuously said to anybody and everybody that you are welcome to come to the Election Commission of India head office. We will give you the electronic voting machines not to be carried home, but in our premises in a sealed condition. And then you are free to show us how you can tamper with them. If it is very easy to break and tamper with the seals, you should have been able to do it. Tamper the seals and show it. But nobody has been ever able to tamper with the seals and show it. As a matter of fact, the only reason I feel people had felt the need of getting unauthorized access to an electronic voting machine is because they felt that they will not be able to tamper with the seals. Because we are willing, even now, to give the machines to anybody in a sealed condition to tamper with. Finally, on the physical security. You see, nobody has said in a police complaint that Mr. Hari Prasad, or for that matter Alex or anybody else, should be prosecuted for stealing. But please remember that electronic voting machines are government property which are responsible for elections in the biggest democracy of this country, and therefore they need to be physically secure. They are in the physical control of the district election officer. A program was aired on a TV channel in which Mr. Hari Prasad said that an electronic voting machine has been given to him by an anonymous source, which has been said even today. When the district, I'll have to please complete this, because this is important. This is what I'm responding to. So, yeah, I'll try, but I might not be able to do it in a minute. This I need to respond because a charge was made. Now, in the TV show, a particular serial number of the machine was shown. The district election officer went and checked in the warehouse and found that that particular machine was missing. Incidentally, this is another thing. Somebody might have been able to take the machine out of the system, but that somebody has not been able to put the machine back into the system. Therefore, that machine cannot be used in a future election. But coming back to the point, the district election officer, therefore, is duty-bound to report the matter. How can he not report the matter? Government property has been taken away in an unauthorized manner. The district election officer will himself be responsible and will therefore be punished. So the district election officer has registered a complaint stating these facts. Alex has shown you the complaint. I would actually request him to himself distribute copies of the complaint that was made. The detailed complaint is that on a TV program, Mr. Hari Prasad has said that an anonymous person has given him an electronic voting machine, which on inquiry was found to be missing. And therefore, police has been asked to investigate. The DEO is duty bound, and all that has happened is that the police has issued summons to Mr. Hari Prasad because he is on record saying that he received it. The police obviously has to interrogate him. He is not going to jail. Like it was put that he will go to jail tomorrow. He is not going to be a martyr like that. But he has to be interrogated. If I am found let us say I am in the USA today, if I say that I have in my possession something which belongs to the government, unauthorizedly given to me by an anonymous source, will the US police not investigate into it, and will they not interrogate me? I think the district election officer is not only within his rights or her rights, but is actually duty bound to get the whole thing investigated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, I was going to ask two questions of the two sides, but I have a feeling that I'd rather have you ask questions. And if you don't ask them, I will ask the ones I have because they're really good. Professor Vora.
Not better than mine. So I had actually 3 questions. I'll say them one after the other as quickly as I can. But before that, a comment. I don't think that the country that produced Infosys and several other people like me should try to fall back on the we can only do low tech. So let's not project India as somebody that can only do low tech. But going on to the specific questions. So one question, and that can be answered either by the election commissioner or Professor Indiresan, whoever wishes to answer this. You want us researchers, and that includes me, to prove that these machines are fallible, and only then would you want to do something about it. But at the same time, we are not allowed the access that district officials have to these machines. We are only allowed that 1 hour at the election commission, wherever it is located, to actually try to break into the machine. So I don't understand how we would be able to prove it to you without all these assumptions that this whole thousands of people who are dealing with these machines are to be trusted, but we are not. So that's one point. And then the other questions I had were for Alex. So one question is that ballot stuffing has been a very serious problem in India. And I didn't see in your paper, in the CCS paper, a description of why you thought that going back to paper ballots would still be better. So I would prefer like some kind of quantitative analysis where you say, this is the number of ballots that are stuffed, or this is the number of seats that's estimated, this is the amount of time it takes now with this EVM, and so, yeah. And then the third question also for Alex is, you recommend going back to paper ballots, but did you consider electronic cryptographic schemes such as maybe a poll booth, Helios, or vote box, or Scantegrity, an electronic version of that? So you didn't talk about the cryptographic electronic approaches at all. And to me, it appears like going back to regular ballots is a regressive step rather than a progressive step. So you tell somebody that, I know you had problems with paper ballots, but just go back to them. Believe me, those problems are not as bad as the ones I found with your EVMs. Rather than that, I think if you have a constructive thing which says, look, there's this research and here are these electronic approaches which will solve both problems or something like that. So, okay.
Thank you very much. And I should emphasize we're being recorded on the record, so you do not have to respond to anything you don't want to, obviously. Just I want to emphasize that. And we'll go with you guys first and then Alex.
You said, why should India go for low tech when you have got Infosys? Number one, Infosys is, in my opinion, a low tech operation. As far as the low tech is this, don't go for a higher technology than what is necessary. A low tech is functioning properly, so you don't have to change it unless you can come with something which is definitely better. Now, you have also made a question that you get only for 1 hour. Election Commission has not said you will get the machine for only 1 hour. You can work for weeks, but do it within the Election Commission premises. Whether it's right or wrong, I am not competent to say. But it is not correct to say that you will get only for 1 hour. Mrs. Vora, you are most welcome to come, spend 3 months in the Election Commission office, and then do it. Thank you.
I'll just add on to that. See, this excess business, I don't know who has spread this, but Election Commission is not restricting. As a matter of fact, we have always invited people to come over to the Election Commission and, show us. And as I said, Mr. V.V. Rao is coming tomorrow once again. So there is no limited access.
Okay, we're going to go to these guys for responses to those questions and a response.
I think it's important that I put the facts, clear some of this confusion. We went to the Election Commission of India sometime in August 2009 because when that was the time when we went to the Supreme Court of India for filing a public interest litigation on the issue. The court said first go to the Election Commission, have your complaints redressed there, and if you still have a problem, come back to the court because you're raising a lot of issues which appear to be technical in nature. So Election Commission of India had invited us, and perhaps they didn't have much choice. And we went there on 17th August. This is what they told us. We'll give you machines. We won't allow you to take them outside. You can come to our premises, spend whatever number of days you want, and then do it. You can hack the machine and show us. That was a fair challenge. We said, fine. We went back on September 3rd, and we asked them to open the machine. The manufacturers had opened the machine, and we were taking certain notes about, our people were making some notes about the internal circuit of these machines, and we were immediately stopped. And Professor Indiresan was there, and it's all on record. This is all on video recording of Election Commission. They said, you cannot open a machine. And we'll come back to you on this, the actual terms of demonstration. And then after a couple of months, they wrote to us saying, you can tamper with the machine, but you cannot reverse engineer. You won't be allowed to either read back the software or replace any hardware. We said that's not fair. If I don't do anything to the machine, how do I tamper with it? But then that was the time. So this seemed like a challenge. They wanted us to perform some magic. So we got hold of this. Somebody gave the machine on their own. So we worked on it, and this is it there in public domain, what Alex, Hariprasad, and all of them have done. And subsequently, we continue to get invitations from Election Commission because we have been, honestly, I think you could contradict me, we have been repeatedly called because we've been directed to them by the Supreme Court of India. And we would certainly go back to the Supreme Court of India if we don't get a proper answer. And we have now been told to hack the machine without opening it. So how do I hack a machine in a controlled condition, which you have sealed, locked, and everything you have done? I have not had access to it, and now you tell me to just see it, look at it, and then do something on the external machine and tamper with it. Thank you.
First, to respond to the claim that the Election Commission doesn't say the machines are foolproof. I'm quoting here from the Press Trust of India story from April 26th of this year. They are reporting remarks from Navin Chalwa, the chief election commissioner at the time, who told the reporters that the machines were, quote, perfect, unquote, and the article says he said there was no need for any, quote, technological improvement, quote, to be made on them. Now to respond to the questions that were directed at me, on the question of paper ballots, and we stopped short in the final version of the paper from saying that paper ballots are the answer to India, and I think the answer to India is to find a transparent voting system that works within their culture and their particular constraints. And I would like to offer to my own research to help work with them, and I think this community has a lot of people who would be willing to work with them. And I know there are many people in India who have been thinking about these problems deeply and would be willing to work with the Election Commission on that issue. As I said, paper ballots are also tamperable, but they have the advantage that tampering with them leaves significant forensic traces. You can see the problems much more often than you can if tampering is based on manipulating computers. Second, on the question of cryptographic voting in India, I think that's a fascinating question. That sounds like a great research problem to see if cryptographic voting would be suitable within the Indian constraints. And please see my paper for some commentary on what those differences are between the constraints here and the constraints there.
Okay, this is what we're going to do. I want to make sure every single one of you gets to ask your questions, and anyone in the audience who might think that the line is too long.
Hello.
And this is what we're going to do. We're going to have every single one of you ask your questions in serial, and then the panel can feel free to respond afterwards to any of them.
After mine.
Well, no, not after you, sir. It's going to be like that. And I'm going to be really strict. You must spend no more than 30 seconds at the microphone.
I have to say this. I'm the one who.
These are the rules.
Well, okay, thank you.
Go.
I am responsible for bringing Alex to India along with Rob and Till Jager with the help of, I want to acknowledge Dr. Dell, who is not, I don't know if he's here. He was the one who put me in touch with everybody. Wonderful, great man. And possibility versus probability. In a country where the 40% elected members are criminals, what would a criminal select? A big way of looting stealing or a small way of stealing? Tell me one thing. And second thing, they are talking about auditing. So far as I know, Election Commission, in spite of all these complaints, have not audited any machines.
Okay, are you done, or is the question, or we need to move to the next person?
The third thing I forgot
Right now.
to do this. Okay, I'll come back.
If you could pass the mic back to Josh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, and this should be quick.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Shukla, I believe in your follow-up remarks, you said that no system is foolproof. And Professor Indira-san, I believe in your talk, you mentioned specifically that no system is tamper-proof. But Mr. Shukla, I believe your title slide, if I recall, described EVMs as tamper-proof. Would you like to take this opportunity to amend or alter that claim about EVMs? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Seppes?
My question is to try to step back from the particular details of these particular electronic voting machines and to observe that both paper-based systems where there are ballot boxes full of marked paper ballots and systems like yours and like many of ours where electronic ballots are stored in electronic containers. Both systems are subject to similar threats of insider abuse from district officials and criminal abuse for people who are committing crimes trying to subvert elections. I would suggest that in order to resolve this very fractious debate, a step would be to engage the assistance of academics and professionals to try to do a apples and apples comparison of both of those methods.
Thank you. Professor Dill.
So I think I'd really like to get away from technical issues and just look at the most basic issues I can think of here. Probably in the history of computer security, of claims that systems are secure, approximately none of them have turned out to be true. And of claims that systems were insecure, approximately all of them have been proven to be true. So claims of security really need to be regarded with a lot of skepticism. And so I think the burden of proof is really on an entity that claims they have a secure system. That, of course, would include not only electronic systems, but paper ballot systems. And so what I find disturbing is less than full transparency and the use of secrecy to cover the details of system implementation. In the U.S., those secrecy of system implementation, of voting system implementation, really turned out to be covering up insecurities that were later demonstrated.
Thank you, sir. Lowell Finley.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I am Lowell Finley. I'm a Deputy Secretary of State from California. And I wanted to say that because I wanted to explain why I think many of us feel that it is valid for us to be looking at and criticizing the system in India. And that is because with the international press, with the internet, with blogs, what is claimed about that system, it's even been referred to by our Secretary of State, affects the views of Americans about electronic voting in America. And then just a couple of quick points.
Very quick.
Yeah, the point was made that your system isn't programmable, but I don't think you refuted the notion that it's possible to replace hardware in it. Secondly, the 12-second time interval may be useful in preventing stuffing, but I don't believe it addresses vote switching, which is what Mr. Halderman was trying to demonstrate. Thirdly, you asked, do critics have a better machine to suggest? I think a better technology exists. Whether it's viable for India or not, I don't know, but that is precinct count optical scan, where you get an electronic record in the polling place that matches the paper, and at that point it becomes very difficult to stuff paper ballot boxes.
Thank you.
So
Professor Jones?
my question for Alec is, has anyone offered to buy Clippies from you in bulk? And I hope if they do offer to buy them, you tell the Electoral Commission of India who the potential customers are. But more important, in my own attempt to assess what I see in India, I note that the vulnerabilities on paper ballots are largely retail, in the sense that each forged vote must be individually forged and each destroyed vote must be individually destroyed. I can steal one precinct's ballot box and burn it, but it's hard to get more. And I think the attacks on voting machines are equally retail if it's done post-manufacture. I have to forge votes on each voting machine or tinker with each voting machine. And so unlike U.S. voting machines, I think I see a difference in scale and a difference in the vulnerability to wholesale attack.
Thank you, sir.
30 seconds.
Dr. Neumann?
3 comments in 30 seconds. Security by obscurity doesn't work. Foreign contractors are not subject to Indian laws and are insiders. And thirdly, in 1988, there was an election commissioner in Florida who mysteriously appeared after 5 hours with the missing ballot box. She had the ability to remove the seal and put a new seal on, which was indistinguishable from the original seal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Professor Rivest?
30 seconds. First, I agree with David Dill that the burden of proof should be on those producing the system. I suggest the following attack is one you hadn't thought of, that each machine is manufactured with a secret opening control number, a 10-digit control number. When that number is typed in at the beginning of the day and then 2 candidate buttons are pushed, the vote totals for those 2 candidates are switched.
Thank you, sir. These are going to be the last 3 questions. Thank you.
Just to all the 4 panelists, have you come across any example of large-scale tampering of EVMs in India, or even isolated instances of EVM tampering which has affected the results of elections in the last 1 decade?
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah. So as I was watching these presentations, I was actually thinking how clever this machine looks and how simple and elegant a design it is, and it seems like it really solves the technical problem. So but no machine is perfect, of course. So the question to the gentleman from the commission is, given what you know now, how would you re-engineer these devices in a way that you think would be better? Because anything can be improved. And the question to Alex, I think, is, if we stipulate for the moment that this style of machine is the best kind of design one could do, how would you construct it in a way that you think would be superior?
Thank you. Professor Edelstein.
Very, very brief comment. The question of questioning their colleague. Yes, you can question him because this is stolen goods. On the other hand, There have been many examples in America, which you asked about, like the Pentagon Papers, and it's maybe very unwise of you politically to do this. And instead, if everything is being done in good faith, why not say, okay, let's talk about what you found out, and let's talk about why we can fix that. I think that would be a better approach.
Thank you, sir. Last question from Mr. Soper. And, Eric, are we ending at 5:10? Is that the 5:20? Okay.
Quick question. I mean, the system that you have doesn't have a server, and part of the problem that we've had in this country with electronic voting machines, there's a central point to attack, and you can just influence everything on real wholesale, and this one doesn't have a server, which feels good. If you have time, or people should reflect on how do you get the totals from each machine, how do you total them up across the entire large country and make sure that that's right.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have 15, or a little bit over 15 minutes, about 17 minutes, and we can do in whatever order you want. Okay, Professor Indira-san, and then Mr. Shukla, do you want to go? And you can sit and hold the mic right there. You don't have to get up if you don't want to.
Friends, I used in my slide, which I didn't show, that systems are being attempted to be tamper-proof. I didn't say it is tamper-proof. Anything can be tampered, and particularly because of insider activity. Actually, in these two firms, the government firms, not more than 3 or 4 people know what the code is. It is kept secret. These are fairly junior officials, they're not very senior officials. From what we know of their character, they will not disclose. Now, you can say this is not a very great proof, but there it is. The point was made that no secure system has proved to be secure, and every system that is considered to be insecure has proved to be insecure. It is true. I do not say that the system is completely secure. I do not know about that. But I am prepared to ask anybody to show that the system as it operates now is insecure, that it can be tampered with, without adding something, without changing the system. Now what Alex is doing and what Narsingh Rao and Hari Prasad, etc. are doing, they want to change the system. Now changing the system, you can make it do anything you want. That's not a very great thing. The question is this: can you prove that the system as it exists today, can it be corrupted? Can you have a Trojan inside it? Can you change the kind of voting pattern that the electors choose, whether it can be changed? This is the question that we are concerned about. If we can show that it can be changed, it can be modified, certainly we will try to either change the whole system or improve it in such a manner it cannot be done. For example, as I told you, the display system, it cannot be changed now because it has been decided it will be sealed. So nobody can add anything to it. You cannot modify it because the system will then be shown, can be physically seen to be damaged. So this is something that I would like you to bear in mind, that do not say that I can put in a new system which can do hundreds of things. Of course it is possible to do so. Nobody can say it is not possible. Question is this: can you do it in the existing security system that the government has? Can you do it we have got 1.3 million machines. You must change at least 10, 20,000 of them, maybe even more of them. Do you mean to say that it is possible to change so many of these machines without being found out? Can you say that having done it, can you sell it to anybody? These are the questions that you have to consider, which is not technical questions. These are purely sociological questions. How can you sell it? Now, I'm offering Alex, if he can make billions of dollars in India because Indian politicians are very rich, maybe richer than the American ones. So he can. He can do it. But let him try. I have no objection to that. And then, of course, we will look into that. And So the question is, can the system as it is at the present time, can it be tampered? That's what I am concerned about. If you change the system, anything can be done. I'm not raising that issue at all, because that's a question of the security of the system. And if you can do it, well, best of luck to you. That's what I have been telling everybody. Please do try this. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you like to go next or last? It's up to you.
Doesn't matter.
Hey, it's really up to you. You guys are.
You want to go first? It's okay. Okay, fine.
Okay. Well, someone go, and I'll give you 4 minutes. So you got 4 minutes.
I think there was a point made about retail fraud, and these machines are not networked, therefore wholesale fraud would not be possible. Perhaps I think retail fraud is what is good enough to flip an election. I think that was the slide he had set his sights on, and I didn't have the time to go through them. We have 1.3 million machines in the country, and as a pollster, as an election analyst, I can tell you which 100 constituencies in 2014 are likely to have a close election. At least 50 to 100. Based on past election trends. And we know which constituencies. It's not difficult to tell at all. There are states where all the constituencies have close elections. So if I can figure that out, I'm not suggesting that there was a large-scale fraud. I'm not even saying there was any fraud. The problem is, somebody asked me yesterday, are you alleging that the 2009 elections were illegitimate? I said, I'm not saying they were illegitimate, and I don't have any reason to say they were legitimate. And that's a very unhappy situation to be in a democracy. And you have elections, and you have a government in position, and you continue to live in perpetual doubt that this election may have been stolen. And you asked me to show you proof. What kind of proof are you asking me to show? If I know, and the question was asked, are there any takers for these offers to fix elections? Do you expect them to come out in the public and say, I paid $1 million to steal an election? But there are accounts where people are saying that we have been approached with this kind of an offer, and then we are simply assuming this is not the case. So therefore, my sincere submission is, so the situation has come to a pass where 13 political parties have recently written a letter to the Election Commission of India saying we need to have a debate on this. And unfortunately, it has not happened so far. I hope this would happen soon. And there was a by-election in the state of Andhra Pradesh where only it was in a very small area. 12 constituencies went to polls, and the local party, which was fighting these elections with a particular cause, did not trust the machines. So they went to the Election Commission with a memorandum asking them to hold paper ballot election. They said, we can't take risk. But they said, no, nothing doing, we won't do it. Then what these people have done is they have fielded independent candidates, dummy candidates, more than 64 of them, because these machines cannot be used the way they are designed now. They cannot be used in an election if the total number of contesting candidates in a particular race is more than 64. So that's a limitation. So what they have done was to field 70 candidates, 70, 80 candidates, dummy candidates, and as a result, paper ballots had to be used in 5 of those 12 constituencies. And the elections, I don't think there are any problems with it. And now the question, nobody is raising questions about that election outcome because the commission says now, see, our EVMs have given a similar result as your paper ballots. So here the paper ballots have become the standard. So what about all other elections where there is no physical proof? So we are actually campaigning for physical proof. I think we will not be satisfied with anything less than a physical evidence, whether it is with machines as voter verified paper trail or as simply paper ballots. But without this, I think it will be too risky to have elections in future without such an evidence. Thank you.
Okay, and I want to make sure Shukla, you have the last word if you want it, but it's up to you. Alex is welcome. He's volunteered to go in whatever order. But Alex, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to respond to just a few of those very, very good points that you've all made. First, to Dr. Indirisan's question of whether I've considered selling these ideas to the political parties in India. I certainly hope you were kidding, but no, I'm not a criminal.
Wasn't that Doug?
I think two people made that point, actually. I'm not a criminal, I'm a scientist, but thank you. Secondly, to Eric's point of how would I make a better EVM, I'm not sure that I know how to make a better EVM. The difference is the difference between security and transparency. We could make one of these that was pretty darn secure, but I don't think we can make one that would be convincing to anyone that the election outcome was correct. It might be possible to use cryptographic voting techniques to get something that approximated that. But I don't think that that would fit within the let's make the simplest low-tech voting machine possible model. I think that it's possible for voting machines to be too simple to be secure and transparent. Third, to the rather amazing point raised by Dr. Inderisen again, that only 3 to 4 people at the election manufacturers actually know what's in the code. And you think that this makes the system more secure? You mean everyone in the country has to trust these 3 to 4 people and the entire system of government depends on their personal integrity? That's absolutely amazing. And I think that that fundamentally is the problem with this kind of voting system. Lastly, I would like to call upon the Election Commission once again to drop the persecution of my colleague Hari and our outside source. This is absolutely ridiculous. It is like the Pentagon Papers situation here. This is a case where citizens have been critical of those in power, and those in power are retaliating against them for their criticism. We want you to work with us, and we'd be very happy to work with you to make this system better. That's all of our goal together, is to have secure and fair elections in India. Please work with us.
Thank you. And Mr. Shukla, you have as much as 6 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all those very good comments. I certainly would not like to go question by question because that is not the kind of time which is available to me. However, one very, very good point was made about vulnerabilities being retail. And I certainly, and I think the point which we should not miss is that this was a comparison between the ballot and the EVM, and the point which was made was that the vulnerabilities are retail in both the systems, so therefore both the systems are more or less comparable. Let me reiterate that we are not dogmatic at all. We are willing to learn. We want to learn. The reason that I came all the way from India to this conference is because we would like to learn from you. We would like to know how to better and improve our systems. Otherwise, really, there was no reason for me to come all the way from India for 2 days. As a matter of fact, I'm spending more time traveling than in the United States. So all of you here, including Alex, if you have some constructive suggestions, I'm sure my email ID would be available with Usenix. We are available, and we would very much welcome all positive, constructive suggestions. Also, to put the record straight, Mr. V.V. Rao definitely had gone to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court definitely had asked Mr. V.V. Rao to go back to the Election Commission, but he is not the only person we are engaging with. We are engaging with large number of people who have not come to us through the Supreme Court of India. There are many others whom we are engaging with and we are talking to, and we have made quite a few changes. We have tried to improve our systems. The only point which I would like to make here is that when you actually suggest changes, please keep in mind the specific situation in our country. And an elitist situation might actually not, elitist solution might actually not work in a country like India. We have a very high percentage of illiterate people. We have very, very remote, far-flung areas which do not have power supply. So please keep in view all of those things, and please also remember that in spite of all of these problems, we have a credible democracy. reference was made to a statement by your Secretary of State in the House or in Senate? In the state of California. So the point that two of our election commissioners have received the prestigious Raman Magsaysay Award for conducting credible and free and fair elections in India. And while Mr. Rao, of course, has the view that he cannot claim that the elections have been illegitimate, but he can't also claim that the elections are legitimate, I have a very, very, very clear and certain reason to sort of say that all the elections ever held in India are legitimate because, see, we have political parties. We have winners and losers. There are parties who were ruling parties and are now sitting in opposition. They accepted the elections and the results. It is not like in some other countries where the losers go on to say that the elections were rigged. The losers in our country have never said that the elections have been rigged. They accept the results, and that is one very important reason that I feel that our elections are legitimate. Then we have a system where a person who's not satisfied with the election result can go to the judiciary, to the High Court with an election petition. And there have been very, very few election petitions, and they have been then scrutinized by judiciary. Therefore, I certainly have no doubt in my mind that the elections held in our country are legitimate elections. We are a very good democracy. But, as I said, we are willing to improve, we are willing to listen, and that's the reason I came here. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait a second. So, I've worked with a lot of advocates, a lot of academics, and a lot of election officials, and I know it's hard to come to these things where it seems like the deck is stacked against you. But I want to express my deep gratitude for coming and for working with us, and that all of us, I think I speak for every single person in the room, and if I don't speak for you, get out. We are available to you. We have, some of us have bigger brains than others here, and some of us are professors, some of us are not, but we have resources, we have capabilities, we can help, and we hope that what ends up in the future is better elections for everyone. So I'd like to thank the whole panel right now.
I couldn't have said it better. I just want to reiterate on behalf of the program committee and Usenix how incredibly pleased I am that you were able to come and attend. This has been absolutely far better than I could have hoped. So thank you so much.